Okay, this is not even the first time I've tried to start doing this, so let's just go with the notes I took and try to make a review out of that. Okay, the movie is set as long as it can be after No Way Home, after they used Doctor Strange to make everyone forget who Peter Parker is and everyone just know him as Spider-Man. But despite that one scene at the end of the movie, we don't have J. Jonah Jameson anymore to essentially go Spider-Man is a menace as a forced character or a character who is just there to do it for the sake of doing it because, well, they shot their shot by having J.K. Simmons come back and then he probably didn't want to go back and they couldn't recast the role without explaining why he looks different. Anyway, there's a point sometime later in the movie where he actually tries to go, we have seen this in the trailers, where he tries to go tell Ned and Michelle, not exactly to tell them because he tried to do it at the end of the previous movie, but just go to see how their lives are going and, well, Ned not knowing who he is and Michelle being pretty much in a relationship with someone else, or a situationship, depends on how you look at it, how she talks about it later when the situation happens. That causes some kind of emotional turmoil similar to in Spider-Man 2 from 2004 with Tobey Maguire, where in that movie it was somewhat theorized that because he was stressed and overworked and never took a rest day from being Spider-Man, that is why his powers shut off. Well, this guy got the exact opposite treatment. The more stressed out and more miserable and more silly he was essentially gifted with powers, which, to be fair, it takes a lot for him to try to control the powers. Like, the webs keep coming out like he needs to verbally say, more web, no more web, more web, no more web, or say something along those lines. And then he has something of a rage state or berserk mode that he fights against Scorpion, who, by the way, Spider-Man's villains that we have in the movie. Yeah, the Scorpion played by who played Vaz in Far Cry 3. Michael Mando. Yeah, that guy is basically an extended cameo and a prop. Same thing with Tombstone, he's just a cameo. Tarantella, also a cameo. The Hand, who we saw in the trailers. Not exactly a cameo, but they're more of a prop or reduced into henchmen. And Damage Control, the organization. They are the anti-mutant organization, which brings us to Sadie Sink. Yeah, she is Jean Grey. Not the adult Jean Grey, who's essentially the Phoenix in X-Men, but more in the lines of the early Jean Grey from when Professor X had pretty much renamed her as Marvel Girl, that young Jean Grey. Or maybe there's actually that other young Jean Grey character, or Jeannie Grey, that was in the... I remember I saw it in the Old Man Logan comics a decade ago, well, I'm that old. And also, she had a sister that I don't recall from my limited understanding of X-Men comics and Jean Grey in them. She had a sister who was, I don't know if she was an original character or someone they made up, or basically it's a character who is and they had to, so it was probably an original character. But essentially she is pretty much a foil to Peter's character arc, with how Peter got the more enhanced senses as Spider-Man and the organic webs. She is also, it's mostly just a body swap, but she can control people, and it's mostly just a telepath and not a telekinetic. But later in the movie there happens when she essentially gets a power boost to jump into telekinetics, and you have a wider range. So it's basically that kind of character foil that she and Peter have, like a foil. Then John Bernthal as Frank Castle/Punisher. Since I don't have Disney Plus anymore, I have not been able to watch Daredevil Born Again or that Punisher One Last Kill, which, to be fair, from a fresh perspective, yeah, I don't think you need to watch those at all. You could just know who the Punisher is, that his family was killed and he is basically a gun-toting vigilante. That's pretty much all you need to know, and also have a first scene establishing that he and Spider-Man know each other to a point that they have some kind of working history or rivalry history, which basically is at that stage where they owe each other some favors to help each other. Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner and Hulk. I have written into my notes that it was a cameo / plot device / status quo change, which is probably best explained as him essentially being the Kurt Connors, the Lizard stand-in, because eventually in the movie also the Hulk is used to is controlled by Jean when attacking damage control, and the damage control is then what that experience which does that it makes does something that makes Hulk become the what was seen in the Incredible Hulk movie back when he was still played by Edward Norton. That's pretty much all Mark Ruffalo's Hulk is. What else do I have here? Yeah, Zendaya as Michelle Jones. This is something that I actually... If you agree with me, then hey, I'm not alone in thinking this. If you don't have the same problem, then good for you. Good for you. So, Zendaya's character, Michelle Jones, whom they call MJ. This character is the reason why I can no longer call Mary Jane Watson as MJ. Like, Mary Jane Watson and Michelle Jones are two different characters. In the MCU, they pretty much decided not to use Mary Jane at all, and they just have Michelle standing in for her. Because she is essentially a separate character than Mary Jane in the movie, she has pretty much moved on. She is in a, well, not exactly probably a happy relationship with someone else who is not named, but I have seen some people theorize that could have been Paul. At the end of No Way Home, Peter had written a letter. She actually gets to read it in the movie, but her memories of the life they had together before the Doctor Strange's spell went out, she doesn't get her memories back from it. She is told that there was a life before, but she just sees that version of herself who was in a relationship with Tom Holland's Peter Parker as a separate character who is gone now. By the way, I have the Wikipedia page for Brand New Day. When I go to Zendaya's characterization and the link for Michelle Jones or MJ in the MCU, it just says that it's an original character in the media franchise that pays a homage to Mary Jane Watson. So, yeah, they're not even the same characters, so I seem to be justified in thinking this. Ned Leeds is still just the Gang Lee cameo and not the blonde Ned Leeds who was basically a co-worker that Peter Parker had in the Ditko Lee comics in the 60s. Then there's also some other characters also who appeared, like there was Jean the Wolf who, I don't know if she's gonna be killed off by the Sin Eater in the future, but she's in the movie played by Lisa Colon-Zayas. Yeah, she's in the movie as a Spider-Man's friend in the Force. Not exactly like Yuri in the PS4 Spider-Man, but otherwise like that. And then there was some other character whom I thought initially was Silver Sable, but apparently it's the other Black Widow who was brought in to replace Scarlett Johansson. Which, if this wasn't an MCU movie and it was maybe just a Spider-Man movie, then maybe she would have been Silver Sable and Hulk would have been the Lizard. And those are all the notes I have. I'm not gonna expand this any longer. I'm just gonna say that good enough movie, but it had some of those few flaws, like more MCU characters that you need to have watched the previous movies to know, and characters that you can have watched the previous things for, but don't necessarily need to watch them. Well, that's about it, pretty much it. I'm just gonna keep this short. It wasn't a bad movie, it was a good movie, and hey, and I got this when I went to the movie, so hey. Fun. By the way, something of a pet peeve I really want to say about Spider-Man's costume in this one. If we can have a Spider-Man wear a cloth costume like that, then there is no excuse, except maybe the costume designer that hires different people who work between movies. Then get David Corens with also a Superman costume that is made from the same fabric and style as the Spider-Man costume here. Okay, I have said enough. And I have other videos I need to edit too, so good movie. I recommend you to see it. It has flaws. If you have seen it, write down what if you have some of those flaws you would like to agree with me, or if there was something good things that you disagree with me. And otherwise, like, comment, check out the channel, go watch videos that are made better than this, and see you on the next video or live stream that I'm currently working on. May your heart be your guiding key.